Everyone,
Good afternoon.
thank you. I am calling to order the committee meetings for the State Board of Education of the state of Georgia for the month of February. And our first meeting is District Flexibility and Charter Schools Committee. I believe our chairman, Mr. Sweeney, is on the way. He's delayed by traffic, so I will turn it over to the vice chair of both the board and the charter committee, Stan DeJarno.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
A couple of items. Good
Afternoon.
afternoon, excuse me. Tiffany?
Item number 1 is a request to approve charter school contract amendments for Savannah Chatham Charter Schools. So there are 4 local charter schools authorized by the Savannah Chatham County Schools, and they are requesting a contract extension to complete the performance metrics identified within their contract. The schools, Tybee Island Maritime Academy, Oglethorpe Charter School, Savannah Classical Academy, and Coastal Empire Montessori Charter School, along with Savannah Chatham County Schools, have agreed that additional time is needed to generate the performance data for charter contract renewal decisions. The charter amendment requests were approved by the Savannah Chatham County Board of Education on November 2nd, 2022. If approved, the contracts for Tybee Island and Oglethorpe would expire on June 30th, 2025. The contract for Savannah Classical would expire on June 30th, 2026, and the contract for Coastal Empire would expire on June 30th, 2027.
Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Taylor? Any objection to adding this to the consent agenda? Hearing none, we'll do that. Item 2.
Item number 2 is a request for the State Board of Education to approve the appointments to the State Charter Schools Commission. The commissioners of the State Charter Schools Commission are appointed by the State Board of Education in accordance with the Official Code of Georgia Annotated, Section 20-2-2082B, from nominations received from the Governor, Lieutenant Governor, and Speaker of the House of Representatives. In accordance with the law, Governor Brian Kemp submitted his nominations for the appointment of Dr. Ben Scafferty and Mr. Jim Cole, and the reappointment of Dr. Lena Milan to terms on the State Charter Schools Commission. If approved, Dr. Scafferty and Mr. Cole's terms would last until January 16th, 2025, and Dr. Milan's term would be in effect until January 16th, 2026.
Any questions for Ms. Taylor?
I want to make a comment about Jim Cole, and I know of all of the appointees, but I've known Jim, I think we all known Jim for a number of years. Jim's very passionate about education. He's involved and has built that athletic program up at Mercer University from scratch. And of course, you know, living in Middle Georgia, it's exciting that we have a football team that's an alternative to going to Athens and being able to see what's happening down there. But he is just a great fit, a great leader, and I'm excited about that. I have to give a shout out to Macon in Middle Georgia, so I'm excited about Jim being involved, and I endorse these appointments. I think it's great. Just want to throw that out.
Any other questions or comments? Is there any objection to adding this to the consent agenda? Hearing none, Mr. Chairman, we'll add items 1 and 2 to the consent agenda. And that is our business for the Charter and District Flexibility Committee.
All right. Did you have some questions? So, I thought you threw your hand up.
No, I did have a question, but I hope it's, I didn't know if we were gonna discuss, several of us were across the street this week, and there's still some meetings on our non-traditional schools. And is Curtis gonna be here? I know that DOE had hired him to work with that to kind of give us an update of what's going on. Is there anybody that can give us an update of what's going on with some of how the law is rolling right now and some of the...
Dr. Taylor?
Sure. So in terms of the work that Dr. Jones is doing with the 3 alternative education charter schools and their transition, at least to alternative education charter schools, obviously until actual legislation goes into effect, we are continuing to operate under the requirements in terms of Senate Bill 153, which was the legislation that required their transition. There is a bill out there that passed from the House Education Committee, and I believe House rules yesterday, which is House Bill 87, that is sponsored by Representative Chris Irwin. That particular bill would still allow for these schools to operate as both LEAs as well as programs for students that are not have not yet dropped out and have not yet reached a certain age. So if a student reached the age of 17 and had dropped out of school or qualified as a dropout based on the definitions that the Department of Education as well as GOSA identify as dropout, then that student could go to one of these schools as an LEA student, an FTE enrolled student. If they had not met those criteria and they still wanted to attend those schools for those services and supports, then they would attend those schools as program students. So they would still be students of the LEA, but then the LEA and the school would have to come to an agreement, intergovernmental agreement on how those services and the funding of those services would be provided.
All right, so I just heard you say there are two types of ways now. There's no more charter involved, right?
So,
Going back,
right now, assuming that there is no legislative change, then the pathway that we are currently on is that these schools would transition to alternative charter schools under Senate Bill 153, if there's not a change this session.
but obviously we heard some talk over there.
Correct.
There was a lot of talk, Lisa and I were there, and so if these changes are made, then there will be two types of students. There'll be a student that goes, I'm trying to look at this other bill.
You could have a student enrolled at the school or a student that is a district student that is attending school as a program student.
Okay, so it turns that they're enrolled eligible students, and those funds come from QBE,
They would get the funding for those students directly.
okay, or program students. So how is that gonna affect, and maybe Curtis, we can get him to come and go by line item on some of that. What about the funding? They're getting a cut on funding then, because they're not getting the additional funding, right? There's a certain amount of money that will disappear.
So with the transition, right, the state charter supplement would not be in place.
Okay, so what about those kids that are out there? I mean, they do work with kids in detention. And they're older. They're not high school, they're just not LEA. They have to go back to their LEA and say,
Not if they are 17 or older and already dropped out. Then they can go to these schools as an LEA student. They can enroll directly in those schools as an LEA student.
so those schools will be their base school.
Correct.
All right, well, what was the discussion about having the graduation rate reflecting? So that wouldn't affect that.
So the graduation rate for those schools would be the graduation rate for the LEA. So if I'm a student that's attending the school, that I'm enrolled directly with that school, the school receives a graduation rate for those students and accountability for those students that they enroll directly. But if the student is attending the school via an agreement with the LEA, then all of that student's information goes back through to the LEA.
Okay,
Helen,
yeah,
let me try to ask your question another way. So a student that is still part of that county high schools or whatever high schools or that school system's graduation cohort, they'll still count as part of the school that they were enrolled in. And they're a program student
Correct.
at the alternative charter school, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so if they're still part of that student's graduation cohort, that school, or that district's graduation cohort, the accountability reverts back to the district, correct? If they've already dropped out, or they're no longer a part of the school's graduation cohort, they can enroll, but they're not a part of the school's, the district's graduation cohort, because they've already been counted as a dropout.
Correct.
And so they are enrolled at the alternative charter school and would graduate from that school. They're part of that district's, that alternative school's accountability index, correct?
Correct.
Okay, well, yeah, and I understand that now. But
Okay.
they were talking about zones and adding more. They would like to have 7 more in Orisa, with the way the zones are. I mean, if you lose 62% of your income, and that was, some of them were saying they were gonna lose income. And so then it comes back to a QBE formula for this one, and then it comes back for program for this. And where is that money coming from that they might need for additional support for kids that have, I mean, we know it's just not books, it's social and emotional and it's outside resources. So, I mean, I know it's in a discussion right now, but I just hope that we can be more informed, because they're part of our responsibility too, and they came to us personally, as we know, everybody was here, and they continue to ask that, we ask questions, and of course, I'm the question ask, thank you, Matt. And so I just wanna make sure that before all this thing gets written up, that we've talked about the things that would be unintended consequences for our kids. How can we better do this? Because in some regions, you know, there's 6 or 7 districts that do this, that, and where I am, down in part of South Georgia, there's no support. Then you've got coastal, you've got one down in your area. And so there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of moving parts to kids being in LEAs, and lots of moving parts to being a program kid, and lots of moving parts for resources support. So maybe can Stan, and since you're chairing and vice chair, maybe if we could get a little bit more information or have discussions since we're asked this, so that
Yes. That's right.
Tiffany,
Well, since you've asked me the question, remember, there are 2 separate bills. One in the House and one in the Senate.
that's what she said, Senate Bill 153 and House Bill
Well, no,
887.
153, that's already law. There's a Senate bill regarding this, and then a House bill, I think it's 87.
87 is the House Bill.
So that all has to be worked out, you know, there'll be some merging or compromise or collaboration between those 2 bills before we get to the end. And I'm sure funding is going to be a part of that discussion. So I don't know how to answer. I don't know if there is an answer for your question at this point about, but because we don't even know what's it, you know, how they're going to end up merging both bills into one statute.
Both bills did look quite different.
They do. Yes, they
You
do.
get a copy of both of those, because I know in the House Bill 87 that the state board had some obligations to that. And if we're obligated for a process and obligated to make sure things are working, then I think we need to know the nuts and bolts of how it's designed. And if there are any unintended consequences, you know, maybe Stan, you can make some, say these are, have we thought of these things? I think that's what's important for us as a board, important to our districts and our students, that we do this for that support. And as they make the sausage over there, maybe it comes out as one everybody's happy with, and
I'm sorry, was that
but
all right.
those are some of the
More closely aligned.
concerns or thoughts that I just had from us being over there, from us listening, from the presentations that they made to us. And so I just felt a little obligated to say, we can ask those questions, and maybe we can come up with some things that help make it a stronger bill or better, and all of our kids can, because, you know, there's some districts, they're not gonna be able to support it if it's not. And we know that. So those are my questions, and we can get back.
There is an opportunity in one of the bills for those 7 areas around the state, and I think one of my concerns, and I think you shared that concern, Helen, is that we don't have enough of these schools. And there is an opportunity now for regions of the state to start their own. So
Yeah.
we'll monitor that. Let me turn it over, is there anything else you wanna say?
Well, and you hit it
Then I
on the
wanna give
funding
Mr.
too,
Donaldson.
because a non-traditional school is not traditional, and a lot of it's a square peg in a round hole kind of thing, and everything doesn't kind of line up as you would think it would, so.
Right.
Thank you for letting me share that.
Mr. Donaldson.
Thank you.
I
I just
got
wanted to, I think your funding question is important, but remember, they have some fairly substantial reserves. They'll have several years they can work out their operations while they're coming up with their new model. So even if the funding does change, if I remember correctly from the presentation, is they do have pretty substantial reserves.
Not all of them though.
Well,
Yeah.
Some of them.
some of them have
Only
pretty
two.
substantial reserves, so it's not like it's gonna cut overnight.
Well, this whole conversation started on funding because,
Yeah.
and that's the reason that enrollment was capped and expansion was halted. Because with the state commission supplement that they were getting, it was a budget buster. I think some legislators felt like that was a budget buster. So I'm sure that's going to be addressed. I don't know exactly where they're gonna land on that. I don't, but as Superintendent Wood said, that the two bills look very different, so we're gonna have to wait and see what comes out in the wash.
Thanks, I mean, we can come up with some concerns and solution ideas, and maybe, like I said, help the sausage be a lot
Just
more.
stay up
Absolutely.
with it.
Yeah,
Along
stay
the
up with it.
Yeah, along the way.
Good points, and to your point you made, Mr. Chair, is that it was pretty obvious to me that our board was pretty lockstep in our feelings and what we believed when Representative Jones, Speaker Pro Tem, I guess now Madam Speaker, because she was Speaker for a little bit, was over here. And I've had subsequent follow-up conversations with her because we had great discussion, and she said publicly she learned a lot and we did too, and where we are on that. And I think what I'd like to see, and I think we will, because our involvement is to continue to try to work with them, because going back even to something Mr. Sweeney, welcome Mr. Sweeney, has mentioned, and we've talked about even offline, is there are so many bills that say state board shall, not may, but shall, in our duties that we're giving under legislative law that, I say this in point anyone, in there too, that we may not even be aware of, that we're not doing as a state board, or we should be doing differently. That's a whole different discussion, but we're gonna be given, we are going to be given responsibility under either legislation, so. Yeah, but another question I have is I wasn't aware that Dr. Johnson was, Dr. Jones, Curtis Jones. I was thinking Stephanie was on my brain. Dr. Jones was, or is he? What is his? What was his? What is his contract? When did we hire? I guess that got by me. I'm sorry.
Yes, so we contracted with Dr. Jones in January to provide supports to each of the alternative charter schools as part of their transition to alternative charter schools.
Okay.
So he works both with the alternative charter schools on unpacking what their new requirements would be under Senate Bill 153, as well as helping them navigate the transition and work with their local districts on consideration for authorizing them as local alternative charter schools.
Was he in the 50 to 250 or under? 50 on the
His
general?
contract is not, it's not 50,000. It's under 50,000.
So is it on the under? Okay. So that he is contracted to help us with this. Okay.
Well, and also kind of be a liaison with
Yeah, I mean,
the
that's great.
existing, yeah.
No, I'm-
Exactly.
Huge respect for Dr. Jones. I mean, he's incredible. Huge respect for him on this. I wasn't aware of that, and two, so is he going to be giving updates to us? Is he gonna be made available for us to discuss this with him, or?
You're absolutely welcome to reach out to him and ask him questions.
Could
Again,
he
you
come
got to
tomorrow?
remember
The January hire, we're still operating as though the current legislation is moving forward. So until we know anything different, the current legislation is moving forward, so from last year. So that's what we're operating.
Yeah, no, it's,
I don't think-
there's a lot, We've been through this how many times? Talking about that this morning, our earlier superintendent is,
Looks like there's
hold
some
on,
shifting.
we don't know what we're gonna be given when we got, that's why I'm saying, I think it's great that Dr. Jones is gonna be helping us with that liaison, but what I'm saying is, let's try to stay ahead of this, because I think
That was my
the
point.
current legislation, yeah, it was done, it was out there, and a legitimate criticism of not acting on it is it was there. But however, so I think some people were operating under the auspice that there were gonna be changes made. And to Mr. Donaldson's point, you're right, there are some big reserve balances, and we can say, all right, here's this legislation, here's your funding, you're fine for now, and we'll get back around, they'll round to it. The round to it doesn't happen a lot of times. So we need to be very cognizant of that and work, because this matters to a lot of our kids, and Stan, we were pretty clear, I think, on there, we ought to be celebrating this, not trying to defeat it, so.
Any other questions or comments for the good of the order? Mr. Chairman, we have 2 items that we're gonna add to the consent agenda. And with that, I'll close the meeting of the Charter and District Flexibility Committee.
All right, thank you, sir. And I've got items 1 and 2. We'll move to consent. So we will now convene the Budget Committee, and I will turn to Mr. Matt Donaldson. Uh-oh, we've lost some people.
Well, they're gonna have to
You're
switch
probably
over.
transition.
Switching over, okay. Pause one more.
We'll get back on track.
Yeah, we will. You've got 17 minutes. That's all plenty. Plenty.
All right.
Wow. All those people on here. 1, 2, 3. There's 4.
All right, a quorum of the Budget Committee, we'll get started. Item 1.
All right, this is Graduation Alliance. Purpose of this contract amendment is to increase the compensation amount and extend the contract term to June 30th, 2023 to continue supports for students through the end of the school year. The contract amendment is $2,777,725, bringing the total contract to $10,555,450.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, item 2.
All right, this is our contract with E3 Diagnostics, or doing business as E3 Med Acoustics. The purpose of this contract is to purchase teleaudiology equipment to implement the statewide expansion of the teleaudiology services focused on birth to 3-year-old diagnostics and follow-up services. The total contract amount is not to exceed $301,174.
Any questions or comments?
This is
That's
the
the
one with the
state
state
schools,
schools, right?
Yes, state schools.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Very good. All right, item 3.
All right, this is a contract with Georgia Public Broadcasting. The purpose of this contract is to develop video resources to support teachers in providing effective science instruction aligned to the Georgia Standards of Excellence for Science. This contract amount is not to exceed $87,950.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, item 4.
Wait a minute,
Oh, hang
this
it.
thing on,
Back to 3.
GPB
Yes, ma'am.
with, science, is it, what phase, I mean, is it earth science, is it, what are we doing, do we know?
Well, I think we've got the expert in the room.
Hey,
Yes.
so what this,
I didn't see it.
Yeah, he's here.
this one is approaching the 6th to 8th grade level. There's already a series of videos that are in production right now for K-5. But what they do is they support the instructional, the standards, and they help to model for teachers and just show what those standards look like, real time in the classroom, using Georgia teachers and certainly vetted by Georgia teachers.
Same thing that was done with math and before.
Same
those-
similar,
okay.
idea, so again, developing resources that go directly back to our standards,
It's
using
good.
our teachers to demonstrate what master level instruction looks like.
Great, thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Rice. Any other questions? Hearing none, item 4.
All right, this is our Advanced Placement Teacher Training Grant. These funds will provide teachers with the opportunity to attend AP Summer Institute training for their subject area in order to maintain or grow AP programs in schools. This total grant amount is not to exceed $199,900.
Any questions or comments?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I was looking on that and it said history. What courses are going to be reviewed in that particular?
I'm sorry, say that again.
What courses are going to be reviewed in that particular training? I saw on there history. Is it for history courses, AP
And
courses?
ELA, and so they'll choose one or the other, and then those teachers would go through that training program, and then they would be, able to teach those AP courses in the 23-24 school year.
Okay, now those courses are courses that have already been approved. They're not any of the new courses that have been
Those are college board courses that are AP courses, yes, they're existing courses that
the
are already.
existing course. I just want to make
They're
sure
the
they're
ones
not.
that are currently accepted by Georgia.
Okay,
Yeah.
you know what I'm talking
Yes, I
about.
know where you're
Okay, I don't want that one. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Very good. Any other questions? Hearing none, item 5.
All right, these are our opportunity grants, which provide teachers with resources necessary to support sustainable instruction and improve learning in fine arts, health, physical education, world language, and our summer bridge program. This total grant amount is not to exceed $1,820,804.
Any questions or comments?
Like a
Yes, sir.
question about how this information is being communicated so that teachers are aware of this.
Okay, so this this is an exciting grant to me because it actually takes the opportunity and teachers can actually apply at the school level. It's not just a district level grant, and then we work in coordination with the districts. But these grants are about putting equipment and resources directly in the hands of teachers that align with the Georgia state standards. So there was about a month period where the grant was open, and then we were able to review those grants using our rubric and award a really nice amount to go back directly into the classroom so that it impacts instruction for boys and girls.
So this is past tense. The grants are going to be, teachers have already applied for these
Correct.
grants?
Correct.
Okay.
There's an application process, they submit it, and so, the notification will go back to their district, but it can be at a school level. So, for example, a middle school, fine arts teacher could write a grant that directly connects to the instruction that he or she is delivering in the classroom. And then we looked at each of those grant applications, and that's how the awards were, determined.
Thank you.
So is it a progressive, I mean, will it come back again? Is it a period of X years?
So we actually call this opportunity grant round 2. There was a round 1 that was completed during last year's fiscal year. This year's fiscal year, it is a significant more amount of money, but we had a larger percentage of school districts and schools that actually applied for it because it was so well received. And we do have plans to look at what would an opportunity grant round 3 look like. Again, the intention is really utilizing these funds to directly impact instruction at the classroom level.
It's after school too, right? There's some after school.
The summer bridge is
Yeah.
for summer school instruction, and that is the one that really spans the out of school time, yes.
Okay, that's good.
Correct me where I'm wrong, this is being funded with our American
Correct.
Rescue Plan funds.
Correct.
So, once those dollars are spent,
Yeah,
Yes, go
yeah,
it,
gotta
it
spend it.
might not be
Spend them on
sustainable
some of
after
that.
that.
Right.
But it's good right now,
Use them while you have it.
that's right. Any other questions? I like that there's a lot of disbursements, a lot of people applied. They're smaller grants, but it's a wide pool for people to get funding, so.
What was that first cohort? Was it 50? How many were in that first cohort of grants?
The,
Opportunity
Uh-huh.
grants, well, the grants themselves are not, what we offered in
50
the
grant.
round 1 is not exactly the same as round 2, because we're again trying to ensure that the offerings that we make fit directly and impact to the highest degree. I would have to get back to you, but I can get that information to you, exactly what the total amount was. I don't remember it off the top of my head. But I do know that the amount of participation, the reason why the funding level is higher for this round is because they were so well received and they were so applicable to what was being done in the classrooms that we had double and triple the applications for this round 2 that we did round 1.
Right.
Ms. Rice, we did $604,000 in fiscal year '22.
That's
So we're
great.
doing
Yeah,
3 times as much, so.
yeah.
Glad to see. Any other questions? Hearing none, item 6.
All right, this is our contract with Azure. This is part of our data modernization initiative, and the purpose of this contract is to purchase the Microsoft Azure cloud-based platform. This contract is not to exceed $2 million.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, item 7.
All right, this is a contract with PC Solutions and Integration. The purpose of this contract is to secure and monitor access to the applications and the data hosted in the agency's cloud-based infrastructure. And this contract amount is not to exceed $354,931.
Very good. Any questions or comments?
This is a crazy question, but with all
Go
of,
for it.
when all, you know, we used to store stuff here and we moved it to another site.
Secure something.
Is this the same things with additional,
I think that,
Cloud.
see, Dr. Osmond, I mean, cloud storage is a little bit different,
Yeah,
so.
it's different.
well, I know it's up there somewhere, huh?
So we're doing
No,
so obviously, yes, you're right, we did use some on-prem services, we're now utilizing the cloud. Of course, to find there should be some increased efficiencies, and the ability for us to deliver a lot more rapidly in a much more agile fashion. We're moving resources there with the intent then that we'll shift those to become cloud native applications over the course of time. So this is a multi-year project that's going on.
Mike, aren't you proud that I mentioned that?
I'm not taking credit or blame for what you just said, Helen.
The answer to that is it's out there somewhere. It's out
It's
there.
the hard data center in Swanee is what it is. It's actually in Swanee, which is north, not up, but.
I said out there.
Sure is. Any other questions? Hearing none, item 8.
All right, this is a contract with the Classic Center. The purpose of this contract is to obtain meeting space, technology, and catering services to support up to 1,300 attendees for the 2023 Georgia Department of Education Data, Privacy, and Cybersecurity Conference. This contract amount is not to exceed $450,000.
Any questions?
That's a-
It's needed.
Yeah,
I have a question. How many years have we been doing this, Dr. Osborne?
Several years, we skipped during the pandemic years, of course, we tried to do some virtual sessions. Yeah, we've been doing this for quite a long time. We use that as an opportunity, also collectively within the agency. That's one face-to-face time we have, for the staff, to be able to meet with the LEA staff there as well too. But yeah, we've been doing it for quite a long time, and it's appreciated and expected by our districts.
Does this cover the registration for the attendees, or do they have to register and pay a fee too?
Yeah, we cover that cost as well too.
Okay.
Yes.
Very
Is this
good.
for a period of one day or several
No,
days?
it's multi-day, actually, this increased cost over last year is that, based on the evaluation that we received last year, our participants asked for an extra day specifically because, there are a lot of sessions that overlap one with the other, and they just felt like that we needed to have some redundancy on days.
some cheating.
The other is that, last year, we reached capacity, and we still had several hundred people that were on a waiting list, and so that's the increase to make sure that those districts that needed to send participants were able to do so.
So you have at least one participant from every district.
Absolutely, we check with them, we make, by default, I think at a minimum, we make sure that every district has a minimum of 5 slots. Obviously, our larger districts have much larger teams, but yeah, we specifically reach out now and tag certain people. Obviously, we want to see things like, our technology director, our student information systems director, we have cyber, folk there as well too. So we're absolutely targeting them because those sessions are specifically designed for them.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions? All right, items 9 and 10 are contracts between 50 and 250 and grant amendments under 250. Are there any questions on items 9 or 10? Hearing none. Committee has reviewed items 1 through 10. Are there any objections to moving those to the consent agenda? Hearing none, items 1 through 10 will be moved to the consent agenda. Is there any other business for this committee? I got us back on track.
You did.
There you
Thank you,
go.
Mr. Johnson. I appreciate that. We'll move items 1 through 10 to the consent agenda. Audit committee is scheduled to begin at 2:10. It's 2:06. We can't start it early because of the way the meetings are set up, so we'll take a brief very brief 3-minute break, and we'll be right on track at 2:10. And at that time, Mr. Royal, I will hand it over to you for audit. So brief 3-minute break. We'll reconvene at 2:10.
Depends.
Can I see the roster?
Did you wear it?
Here, I need to update it.
Are you saying we need to wear?
We got plenty of
Just
that.
gonna-
And we will now move to our audits committee meeting. And we'll hand it over to
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to call to order the Audits Committee meeting for February, good gracious, February 2023. And we've got some staff on, we've got Rusk in the room with us. We've got some staff online with us. If you just go ahead real quick, staff, I see Amy on, I'm sitting to the side. I can barely see it very well. Our audit staff here at SAE. I see Amy. Who else do we have with us online from DOE?
Hi, Mike. We have Sarah Anna Sharping from Financial Review. And we have Sarah McLeod from the Department of Audits joining us.
Okay, that was gonna be my next question. Who do we have from the Department of Audits?
And I'll
Over there.
let the others introduce themselves with DOE.
Hey, this is John White. I'm with Federal Programs ESSA, and we also have Ken Banter.
Awesome,
He's our Title I manager.
perfect. And I see Sarah on here from Greg's shop over there. All right.
Yep, I'm here.
Awesome. Who else do we have with us from the State Department of Audits?
You just get me today.
Awesome. You get you drew the short straw. Oh, okay. Let's see. All right. Well, we'll get going. Amy, I appreciate your conversations and our pre-meeting up to this. We do have some things to celebrate from our SB 68 higher and moderate risk districts on there. Can you give me, just to start with, a high-level recap of where we're at? Because I know we were waiting on in January some of the data to be turned in and for y'all to take a look at it and see where we were with our high and moderate risk districts.
Sure, we actually have a few that have come off the list, so we are excited about that. We have Chattahoochee County, Harris County, Pierce County, all released, and Jeff Davis County. Our next report will also show Crawford County as being released. We didn't have the list updated before we loaded it, so we haven't changed the list since we loaded to the board items, but Crawford will also be released. So that is great news. We are pleased with that. We're also in the process of some of the audits being issued that have repeat findings. Just given the timing of when Senate Bill 68 became effective in law, July 1st, 2021, some of the audits for 2021 were issued with the same findings for 2020. So we're in the process of getting updated corrective action plans for those. But we do think that we are making progress.
Okay. What about the districts on here where we haven't gotten their most recent audit, where our most recent audit is from 20, we haven't received the 21 audits on there. What's our status of those?
Sarah can speak to specifics, but I know that all of the 2021 audits that Department of Audits was working on have been, the field work's been completed and they're all in close to being released. We do have Clayton County's 21 audit that's still outstanding. They did switch CPA firms, and we've been meeting with them recently to discuss issues with theirs, and we're hoping that we get that soon. We have a few others that were CPA audits, and this is kind of an unusual time where we had some audits held up for clarification from U.S. Department of Education on allowability of expenditures with our ESSER funds. So we are seeing some audits released a little later than usual. We don't anticipate that's going to be the issue for 2022 now that we received several months ago clarification from USAID.
If you want me to, I can tell you there's some more. So we do have all of our FY21 reports in and they're in closure, which means they're about to be released. There are 3 more that are going to come off the list once they're out there. City of Tryon, Wilkes, and then Ware County will come off the list as well when those are published. So there's 3 more that have improved. And then there's also a handful that are gonna have a designation, but have not been reported yet just because they have not been released yet. And I can go over those if you want me to tell you who they are. But they're the ones that haven't been released yet on our website.
Okay, no, I mean, please do, because part of this is just so we can, like I say, we're not, coming into this with a hammer unless we have to, but.
Right.
So, it's best to just tell it like it is and put it out there so everybody can be on the same page.
Agreed. So most of these are gonna be repeats, that were on there from their 2020 audit. So for high risk, you're going to see Talbot, Dooley, City of Thomasville, and City of Beaufort stay on the high risk list for their 21 audit report.
City of Beaufort, I understand they have a new financial.
They do. Yep, and I've met with him a few times, and he seems to be really getting on top of things. There's just some lingering issues that are going to take some time to clean up. It looks like they're working on improving the relations between the city and the school district, which has been one of their main struggle points.
Yes.
That seems to be clearing up. They do have some separation of duties issues. There was a finding. This was the third year for that finding, so that's actually what's driving the high risk designation for them. Now it's not the transactions between the school board and the city. So that was that revenue finding was resolved, but now they have a separation of duties issue that they need to clear up, and they're working on that. So hopefully when they get their 22 report, if that one drops off, they would come off the high risk list.
Okay. I'm going to circle back to Talbot, the Dooley and Thomas obviously being repeat on there. Is there anything that's jumping out at you? Share good or?
City of Thomasville, the only thing I can note about them is they've had a lot of turnover in some key positions. So obviously when that happens, it's not easy to get in and clean up what's there. So that may be driving some of their issues. And then let's see, what was the other one? Dooley. They just have some, I'm trying to see what exactly, they had a lot of similar findings. They did clean up their federal findings, one of them, but they still have some controls at the central office that they need to work on. So there's those internal controls at the central office that was repeated for 21.
Yeah, and for Dooley, they do have a new finance officer in place that just recently started. The financial review team's been in contact with that finance director and setting up some meetings. And we know that they had some issues in 2022. So hopefully everything will be good with the transition, but we know that they're going to, we're going to continue working one-on-one with them as well.
Before I get into, I'm going to have some specific questions on Talbot. Before we get into that, are there any other, Sarah or Amy, comments you have on? I mean, there's some really good news. We're getting a lot of folks off, and that's the goal. But do you have any other comments or any other thoughts that need to be shared with our committee on any of the others on the moderate or high risk?
I do have the additional, those were just the high risk ones. There is a handful of moderate risk that will be the last designations for our FY21 cycle. So those are Burke, Lamar, Dodge, and Talifer.
So Dodge isn't even on here right now, so they're going on moderate.
Yeah, and it could have been, I don't know the date right off the top of my head, but this could have been their first audit under Senate Bill 68.
Okay.
But they had an internal controls at central office finding.
Okay.
And yeah, I'm thinking we might not have received that one yet.
Yeah, it's not. These are all, I was just giving you a preview of what's to come. This whole list is not released yet. So Amy's group does not have this information yet.
Okay. All right. Amy, I want to jump into Talbot because I'm concerned. I have some serious concerns with that because I know staff, DOE staff's been in there for a while. How long have we been working with Talbot to?
It's been close. I know it's been over a year and a half. We sent them a letter a year and a half ago, but we started work with them, Amy, maybe 2 years ago. Is that?
Yeah, August of 2021 is when the superintendent requested us to provide assistance. But we have been working on reconciling their financial records for several years for their federal programs back to 2017.
Okay. How much of their federal, I know they're having to get permission before some of their funds are drawn down. How much of their federal funds have been drawn down year to date?
Year to date, their first payment will go out tomorrow because they just requested drawdowns last week, and they requested drawdowns totaling $204,000 out of all of their grants. They did not have any budgets approved through January 31st of their ESSA. Let me rephrase that. They did have two. They had a CTAE grant approved prior to January 31st. So we are concerned about that just because we got, 7 months through the fiscal year and we did not have the federal program budgets approved. So we have worked with our federal programs department. We met with them on January 12th and we discussed our expectations at DOE for Talbot. We want to ensure that their general ledger is cleaned up to avoid any kind of reporting issues or findings. And so they are on what we would call a modified invoice application where they submit documentation with all of their drawdowns and so forth. And they had some issues with their monitoring from last year, which held up some of the budget approvals. But we were all in agreement that the budgets were going to be approved by January 31st. We are still pending 5 budgets to be approved, but as of February 9th, the rest were finally approved by the superintendent. So after the budgets were approved, they were able to submit the documentation for drawdowns.
That's now, let's
Yes.
say 7 months into fiscal year, no federal funds have been drawn down, the first check's about to go out, and we're in a district that has very high poverty, very high special education, very high special needs. I'm imagining that they're not caught up on all of their readers from their at grade level. Go ahead.
I can't speak to the actual test scores or anything like that, but I can speak to the fact that there were no federal funds drawn down to support their programs up until now. And we are concerned as well. We have been working one-on-one with the finance officer. This is the 3rd finance officer in about 4 years. It's our understanding that that finance officer is also still working in the previous role that they had at the school district, that the IT director position hasn't been replaced. And so we aren't sure if that's what the issues are. They are working with a consultant as well. But the general ledger for past fiscal years needs to be cleaned up because they still are receiving question cost findings on their audit. Their 21 audit was released on January 24th, and there's a question cost of $117,000 in Title I that we are currently working with our federal programs department to determine if any of that needs to be refunded. The last time they refunded was for the 2014 audit. They refunded $142,000 in 2017 related to the 2014 audit. They refunded $52,000 in 2011. So this is a recurring issue with Talbot. And we're working really hard, meeting with them weekly, trying to get it resolved, but they have a long way to go.
There are students that need these services from these federal programs and they're not even drawing them down. And I know what the tax digest in Talbot County looks like. I mean, it's a rural county and needs those. Mr. Chair, it's going to be the request of the audit committee chair to have a visit next month in March with the Talbot superintendent and at minimum the Talbot chairman of their Board of Education, all other members that would like to attend can, but we need to, I find this completely unacceptable. There seems to be to me, it looks like a lack of urgency from the top.
Right.
And we need to have a discussion, and I think further discussion beyond this meeting today on the issues at hand.
Right, we'll go ahead and put, for March, we will know that we will have the need for an audit committee. And I'll certainly reach out to their superintendent and their board, ask them to, I'll give them the time and ask them to be present.
Jill. Anything else on, I've heard enough. We've got to, those kids need to be served, and they're not at the level of which apparently they are. So I'll leave it at that, and we'll have a meeting with them. Is there any others on here that you can, I wouldn't want to be mentioned after that, but I'm not trying to anybody, but is there any other folks on here that, or anything else that either Sarah, Amy, any of our other members from DOE that have any data boys or any comments or questions about for the good of this audit committee?
None from financial review.
Okay. Well, appreciate the, Sarah, appreciate the heads up on what's coming, and we'll get to that, but it does sound like there's a lot to celebrate and a few that need a little more work and a visit and discussion, so we'll go from there. Anybody have any questions? Any board members have any questions or anything? Audit? All right, with that, we will consider audit committee hearing closed.
Right, thank you, Mr. Royal. All right, at this time,
Thank you.
we will,
Thank you.
thanks everyone. At this time, and we'll go ahead and onboard everyone for the Rules Committee.
Zero funds. Right, budgets.
We get some people here, right? All right. And I will hand it over to Ms. Petty, who's the chairman of the Rules Committee. Ms. Petty.
Thank you very much. Dr. Taylor. Megan's gonna go.
Those kids are getting, that's the line.
All right, Rules
Kids are getting
Committee.
served.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hello, hello.
I don't-
Week there, we need to.
I've been babysitting a 3 and a 1-year-old. I'm a little weak at the moment. All right, Dr. Taylor, item 1.
Item 1 on the agenda is a request for the State Board to adopt the amended State Board Rule 160-5-6-.01, statewide school nutrition program. This rule is being amended to address the changes provided for in Senate Bill 397 from the 2022 legislative session, which replaced the term general education development with state-approved high school equivalency. The proposed amendments also reflect the update in food safety certification with the Georgia Rules and Regulations for Food Service, Chapter 511-6-1, and bring the rule into alignment with the department's current training modules for managers. At the December 2022 meeting, the State Board approved the initiation of the rule to be posted for public review and comment, and it has been posted for more than 30 days.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. Did we get any comments from anyone?
We did not.
All right, any comments, questions from the panel? All right,
tomorrow, we will do a separate vote for this since it is a rule adoption change. All right, item number 2.
Item number 2 is a request to adopt the amended State Board Rule 160-4-2-.34 dual enrollment. This rule is being amended to change the name of the dual enrollment graduation options from Option A and Option B to dual enrollment requirements for the traditional high school diploma and dual enrollment requirements for the accelerated career diploma, respectively. The current dual enrollment Option B requirements were established as a result of the passage of Senate Bill 2 from the 2015 legislative session. In lieu of the full 23 units of credit required to earn a traditional high school diploma, Option B allows students the opportunity to earn their high school diploma upon the completion of state-required 9th and 10th grade level high school courses and required tests, an acceptable score of admission on a required post-secondary readiness assessment, and the completion of an associate degree program, technical college diploma program, or at least 2 technical college certificate of credit programs in a specific career pathway. The Technical College System of Georgia requested that the State Board change the name of Option B to Accelerated Career Diploma, and at the January 2023 meeting, the Board approved the initiation of this rule to be posted for a public review and comment, and it has been posted for at least 30 days.
Did we get any comments on that one?
There were no comments to the name.
Any comments, questions, concerns from the panel? All right, then this will be an adoption, so it will be a separate vote also tomorrow. Item number 3.
Item number 3 is a request to post the course Living and Working with Artificial Intelligence for public review and comment. This proposed course is a middle school exploratory computer science course. Course standards, which were developed by a team of artificial intelligence experts and educators, will introduce the fundamental concepts behind artificial intelligence, provide insight into how it impacts our society, and foster exploration of future careers in artificial intelligence and adjacent fields.
Any comments, questions, concerns?
No.
Yeah.
Huh? Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
Question. Is this with, who is this with, April?
Yes.
Okay. When you have meetings with the development team for this, looking at the different standards, could you notify the board members? This is something that I would really like to hear. Okay, thank you. Yeah, very interesting. Everything going on with AI.
A lot going on there.
That's very good.
All right. We'll move this to the consent agenda tomorrow. Item number 4.
May I ask,
I'm sorry. Ms.
too
Rice.
about that? Does this align with some of the CTAE courses that they're doing also in artificial and?
There is some alignment. There was an advisory task force that worked on the development of the standards, so, but it is an exploratory class that will lead, allow students to begin to be introduced so that as they move into the high school, they can choose pathways that meet their interest and where they want to pursue.
Did we get a request for this from a district?
I'll have to get back with you on that, and the reason why I have to get back with you is this set of standards was already in motion before I moved into my position, but it had been heavily worked on by the advisory task, but I'll get some context of that and get back with you.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, item number 4.
Item number 4 is a request to initiate an amendment to State Board Rule 160-4-7-.03, Child Fine Procedures. This rule amendment is being requested for initiation, which means if approved, it will be posted for 30 days public review and comment. State Board Rule 160-4-7-.03, Child Fine Procedures, is being amended to align with Federal Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, and its implementing regulations. The proposed amendments remove the requirement of interventions prior to referral to special education for all suspected disabilities, with exceptions only for the most significant cases. These current requirements exceed the IDEA, and this amendment should significantly reduce any delays in students receiving special education services as allowed in IDEA. If approved for initiation, the proposed rule amendment will be posted for 30 days public review and comment.
Comments, questions, concerns?
The only thing that, so the referral comes and then the intervention comes after that, correct?
To ask the special education team.
Not necessarily.
Okay,
You know, districts we hope have multi-tiered system support. and
MTS,
they've got,
uh-huh,
you know, automatic interventions to begin with a child that may have difficulty learning to read or whatever it happens to be. So we're very much supportive of interventions. The problem with this part of the rule is it's in prior to referral. So we were holding up referrals to special education in some case because it was being interpreted that I've got to do so many weeks of intervention. And that's not necessarily the case. So it was really just that it was the requiring interventions prior to referral. Of course, we still have rules like the SST rule that talks about interventions. But actually, specific learning disabilities is the only category that requires response to intervention.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Okay, we'll plan to move this to the consent agenda tomorrow. Item number 5.
Item number 5 is a request to initiate an amendment to State Board Rule 160-4-7-.16, Georgia Learning Resources System, GLRS. This rule amendment, again, is being requested for initiation, which means if approved, it will be posted for 30 days public review and comment. State Board Rule 160-4-7-.16, Georgia Learning Resources Systems, encompasses the 18 centers that provide professional learning, technical assistance, and coaching for the state around special education. The GLRS provides trainings to regional districts to meet IDEA compliance and to improve achievement for students with disabilities. The proposed rule amendments remove outdated references to No Child Left Behind, aligns administrative programming determined by the regional organizations, and eliminates the requirement to maintain a materials center. To meet federal requirements, the department reviewed proposed rule changes with the State Advisory Panel for Special Education and the Special Education Directors Forum, as well as held 2 public hearings. If approved for initiation, the proposed rule amendment will be posted for 30 days public review and comment.
Comments, questions, concerns?
I guess, Sean, what brought this on that had so many changes had to be made at that point? I know,
Are you speaking specifically to that rule? or
Yes.
Several rules at a time?
well, there's several, but,
Well, we've been meeting to update the rules for quite some time, so we're taking a look at any rule that we feel that needs to be updated. Obviously, the one that child find needs to be in line with the federal requirements, like we have the overreach on our part as a state. This actually stems from the fact that this used to be an allocation a number of years ago and switched to a contract. So we switched to a contract, but we didn't update the board rule at that time, so we're trying to update any of our rules that need, as you see, the No Child Left Behind, or reference to outdated things that have changed in the meantime.
so there were no concerns with your group, that everybody liked the way it was moving, correct? With this specific rule?
GLRS?
Yes.
The only mentioned this was the, taking out the language, we put in a contact person to match what was in the contracts that we use, so to mirror that, there was mention of, taking out the title of director, so that there could be a concern that the, GLRS, they might use, another title in lieu of that. If they do that, then in essence, that could impact the pay, retirement. However, we consider that to be a local control issue, and we're trying to be in line with the contract, so that should really be addressed between the GLRS and the resource and the fiscal agent.
Okay, thank you.
And Sean, I think over the course of this year, you're gonna be updating quite a few rules. So these are gonna be coming every month, maybe not every month, but you're gonna be updating the verbiage and language in a lot of these just to meet current.
Correct.
Yeah, most of the stuff we're looking at now is basically either a language cleanup deal or action that we're taking, or a slight procedural, trying to update the to align with where we're at.
All right. Okay, any other comments, questions? If not, we'll move this to the consent agenda, item number 6.
Item number 6 is a request to initiate an amendment to the State Board Rule 160-4-7-.18, Grants for Services. This rule amendment is being requested for initiation, which means if approved, it will be posted for 30 days public review and comment. State Board Rule 160-4-7-.18, Grants for Services, includes information and requirements related to 3 state grants: the Grant for Residential and Reintegration Services, the Grant to Access State Interagency Service, and the Grant for Low Incidence Program Services. The rule amendments related to the Grant for Residential and Reintegration Services provides clarity on the locally funded portion of the grant and allows for a greater reimbursement for residentially placed students if funds permit. The amendments related to Grant to Access State Interagency Service update the names of state agencies and specify costs permitted as a result of the grant. The rule amendments omit language related to Grant for Low Incident Program Services because this grant no longer exists. Again, to meet federal requirements, the department proposed rule changes with the State Advisory Panel for Special Education and the Special Education Directors Forum and held 2 public hearings. If approved for initiation, the proposed rule amendments will be posted for 30 days, public review and comment.
Comments, questions, concerns on number 6? If not, we will plan to move this to the consent agenda tomorrow. Item number 7.
Item number 7 is a request to approve the appointment to the Board of Directors of the Georgia Foundation for Public Education. The Georgia Foundation for Public Education is requesting the State Board appoint David Knuckles to the Foundation's Board of Directors. The Official Code of Georgia Annotated, Section 20-2-14.1, provides that the Georgia Foundation for Public Education shall be governed by a Board of Directors composed of 5 to 15 members as determined by the State School Superintendent. Members of the Board of Directors shall be appointed by either the State School Superintendent or the State Board of Education. For every 3 board members appointed by the State School Superintendent, the State Board of Education may appoint 2 board members. And it is requested that the board appoint David Knuckles to the Georgia Foundation for Public Education Board of Directors.
Comments, questions, concerns? Number 7. If not, we'll move this to the consent agenda tomorrow. Anything else for the good of the committee? Not, Chairman, we stand adjourned.
Great, and so consent, we will have, looks like, is it 2 through 7? No,
No,
3 through 7.
3 through 7.
And 1 through 2 are for
Separate.
separate votes. All right, very good.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask?
No, you may not, but go ahead.
Lisa and I had the privilege of coming to the LEA workshop with our teachers and all, and at some point, I guess tomorrow,
ELA.
what did I say?
LEA.
Oh, ELA. April, sometime tomorrow, could you just kind of talk a little bit about that? It was a great, the energy was great, the excitement of how the missing parts are being completed, it was really good. There was a lot of good talk. I love the Post-it notes, and it did a great job. I think it would be worth a little bit of sharing to everybody as we.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
that's it. I'm zipping.
For now, right?
Yeah.
For now, all right. All right, well, that concludes the business of rules, and so the only thing we have left on our agenda is, at this time, I will entertain a motion to go into executive session if there is a need for such. All right, do I have a second? For what? Well,
Second.
clarify it is to discuss legal matters and personnel matters.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? We will be in executive session.
Hey, Tiffany.
Is this, you need this back?
Were you selling it?
I've got several copies.
Well,
So you're gonna do us an update